And I'm here now with David Sidgwick, who is Dorset's Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner candidate. And thank you for coming along and talking to us.
Hi Phil, it's good to be here.
Now, tell me, David, how did you come to apply for the role of PCC, and what's your background?
So my background, I was born and I've always lived in Dorset. I started wanting to be a vet for a few years. That didn't work out, so I joined the pharmaceutical industry. Started off as a medical rep for Dorset and wound up on the UK management board of a large pharmaceutical company. And that's significant because that teaches you about strategy, leadership, resource allocation, which are exactly the qualities you need in order to perform the role of PCC. That went until 2000. Then I started my own company, which I ran until 2018. And the reason I stopped it, the reason I closed the company, was to campaign and prepare for the role of Police and Crime Commissioner. I had a number of experiences which triggered that. One was somebody tried to defraud me, and 45 minutes on the phone to 101, and then somebody who couldn't give a stuff kind of wound me up. I saw that antisocial behaviour was in the press almost constantly. And then a couple of other things. I saw an article in the paper which said Police and Crime Commissioner wasn't confident of keeping us safe that summer. Yet I saw another article from a PCC elsewhere which said it's tough, but this is how we're going to keep you safe this summer. And to me that was a difference in leadership. And I think the final thing which put the tin hat on it was the idea of the merger with Devon and Cornwall. Now my experience of business, I know about mergers, and I couldn't find the benefit for the people of Dorset. There didn't seem to be enough money in it to make it a financial motivation, and it certainly didn't seem that we would get a better service. So I was really pleased when that didn't come forward. But all those things together got me a bit sort of miffed. I started moaning, and my wife said, stop moaning and do something about it. So I spent the first year going out with other PCCs, seeing other police forces, finding out how Dorset worked, and then for the last 2 years I've been the Conservative candidate.
Lovely. Okay, well, it looks like, David, you've done an awful lot of research into this, background research as well. Of course, you were prepared to stand in the elections last year, which were cancelled because of the COVID problem. So you're well up to speed on all the issues currently that exist. What's your attitude, David, about helping victims of crime?
Well, that's one of the core functions of a Police and Crime Commissioner. And in actual fact, one of my priorities is actually to say that we must put victims and communities as our priority going forward. Look, I've spent a lot of time talking to people across Dorset. I've had people meet me in pubs when we could meet in pubs, and they have been absolutely devastated. They are in tears because they basically have criminality happening to them virtually every week, and they can't seem to get an answer. They can't seem to get a change, and that's what's going to happen.
How do you view police resources at the moment? Because you mentioned that you had a crime problem yourself. It was difficult to get hold of the police. And that's what I'm hearing all the time, that people, when they have incidents at their home, thefts, burglaries, it's very difficult to get hold of the police, even on 101. So is this caused by the police being diverted, do you think, into other issues like COVID restriction enforcement, protests as well? We've had a lot of protests recently. Does this divert them away from the core business of looking after the public?
Well, obviously, we've had a very strange year. We've had the police policing our liberties in a way that they would never want to do, but it's been absolutely necessary in order to keep us all safe. I think there's a fundamental problem. One of the things I found in my research was that if you looked at those high-performing forces across the country, you found that spookily their priorities said things like to cut crime. It said things like to tackle violent crime. It said things like to address hidden harms like domestic abuse, like child abuse, like fraud. We don't have a police and crime plan which says that. We have protect the vulnerable, support victims and witnesses, work with communities and transformation. And I think we have to get back to a fundamental approach where we expect the police to cut crime and antisocial behaviour. And that's part of it. The other part is that we've obviously needed more police officers. Now they're coming. We will have 166 extra police officers by the time the uplift, Boris's bobbies, have worked through the system. But it's making certain they go to the right places. And the right places for me are the neighbourhood policing teams and the rural crime team. Because I am very aware that we have two parts to the county. We have the conurbation and we have the rural shire. And both sides of the equation need to have the policing that they expect.
What's your view then on volunteering within the police service? And should volunteers, other than special constables, have powers in their role supporting general police activity?
That's a very good question. I am a great believer in volunteers, not just within the police force, but also outside it. So, for example, I will be strengthening things like Neighbourhood Watch, Community Speed Watch. I hope to bring in a new mounted Neighbourhood Watch for the rural shires, for those places where cars can't go. So I'm a great believer in volunteers. I'm also a great believer that we need to make certain that they have the powers which work and are appropriate.
As a Police and Crime Commissioner, you're responsible for the budgets of the police force. How are you going to maintain pressure on the Home Office to ensure that there's equitable funding for Dorset Police?
I've already started doing that. I've been going at this for 3 years. I've met with the Prime Minister twice and discussed this specifically with the other Conservative PCCs. We are very aware that rural urban counties like Dorset do not get a fair shakedown from the national funding formula. And we are intent on getting that changed. Because I'm a Conservative, because I'm part of the team, I have more effective communication channels in order to get that done. And I believe we'll get it done in 3 years.
David, during this lockdown period, people have been stuck at home. Sometimes it hasn't always been a good experience for people. And there's a lot of domestic abuse about at the moment. What are your views on that?
Oh, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the most terrible issues that we have. Not just because of the physical abuse which comes with domestic abuse. I understand it extremely well because I have a close family relationship with somebody who had a 23-year coercive and control. Eventually it became violent domestic abuse situation. And it is that. It is like it grinds you down. You eventually find you're behaving in different ways to what you would normally do. And you have to basically perform according to the person you're living with. If you don't perform, that's when it starts getting violent. So I absolutely understand that. I have a 15-point plan to address domestic violence and stalking. And that includes victim support. I've been to the refuges in Dorset. I've spoken to the charities. I understand what they need. I want to make certain that the police force understand domestic abuse and stalking. I know that stalking is a relatively new offence compared to harassment, and there's a lot of work been done as to what it looks like. But I want to make certain that the lessons learned in other forces are translated across to Dorset Police.
Now, David, here at Forest FM, we cover the western part of Hampshire and East Dorset. We're right on the borders here. Do you think that people think they're getting the same service as we're coming to this overlap area between Dorset and Hampshire as people well tucked into Dorset?
Phil, that's a really interesting question. I've had a number of people say that to me. So wherever the borders are, there seems to be this perception that the service isn't quite as up to snuff as elsewhere. And I've taken that to heart. What I've done is I've formed a group with the Southwest Conservative candidates. So if we are successful, we will have very close working relationships. So in the particular case of Verwood and the East, that's with Donna Jones from Hampshire. So we've sat down and we've talked about it, and we intend to make certain that if the fading of the fringe is a thing, it won't be in the future.
What mechanism are you going to use to communicate between yourself and the public, and to get the public to talk to you as well?
That's something I believe in totally. That's why I've done it for 3 years, because I've made certain that I've gone across the county, from Alderholt in the east to Holditch in the west, from Sherborne to Lyme Regis to Portland to the conurbation of Bournemouth. I've made certain I've talked to as many people as possible. I've done 50 face-to-face meetings to audiences of between 6 and 200 when we could do those things. I've run 3 surveys. I'm the only candidate to have run 3 surveys. So it is about connection with the people. That's who you serve. When I'm a PCC, I'm going to make very certain I continue with that. So I'm going to be out and about, doing talks, seeing people, holding surgeries, making certain that I am accessible.
Just as a final statement there, David, just a final statement to encourage them to vote for you on the 6th of May.
On the 6th of May, the people of Dorset have an opportunity. They have an opportunity to vote for somebody who cares passionately about their view. This has to be seen through the prism of the people. And I intend to make Dorset the safest county in the UK and to make, with your help, our police crime fighters again.
David Sidgwick, Dorset's Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner candidate. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us here on Forest FM.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for your time today.